Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gem Mint 10 podcast. My name is Stephen Frainer, and I'm here with our guest, Rob Frainer, aka Father. It's great to have you here today, Dad.
Oh, it's great to be on the show, Steve. Thank you.
Yes. So today, as the title of our podcast says, we'll be talking about statistics and more specifically Sabermetrics, and kind of how we'll get into what Bill James did for the game, how it's revolutionized things, and we'll have a few more things we'll talk about.
Sure.
Let's just dive right in.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dad, do you like statistics particularly? What's your level of knowledge or experience with using statistics or, data in baseball?
Sure. I think I personally think statistics are vital to the game. That's what makes baseball great is the analysis of statistics between Juan Soto and Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds and Lou Gehrig. So I'm all about it. In my generation growing up, they were simpler. But in my lifetime, I've actually seen the shift from just a good ball player and the back of the baseball card, which I have collected baseball cards my entire life. Speaking of which, Bill James, who is credited as really the father of Sabermetrics, was actually given the honor of a Topps baseball card himself, which is really a rare honor for a non-baseball player to get. Yeah. But I do believe in them, and I've seen them in my lifetime absolutely shift to what they are now, very computer oriented.
Mm-hmm. And we've talked about in a class I'm taking at Vanderbilt, there's a generational divide sometimes between the older generation and the newer generation or the younger folks about the importance and also just the legitimacy of some of these newer stats. But it seems like that doesn't seem to be the case with you.
Exactly. When Bill James was 28 years old, he put out this book. This is an updated version. He put out a book in 1977 called The Baseball Abstract. Well,
it was like a pamphlet. So it was smaller.
No, it was pretty. It
was pretty big.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
He was pretty detailed. But Sparky Anderson was the manager of the Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds, won 2 straight World Series. And Sparky, you have to Google the exact quote. It's not very flattering what he said about Bill James and his newfangled statistics. But he called him a few names, and Bill James took it with a grain of salt. So really, they were really rejected in the beginning.
Yeah,
like he was considered an oddball and computer guy, paper guy, and baseball was considered a hands-on. For example, if anyone here saw that movie, A Trouble with the Curve with Clint Eastwood, that is the divide.
Great movie.
That is a divide. The old school scouts have to see the player versus the computer-generated statistics on how the player has done. Yeah. So that's a great movie to kind of see, pertaining to this subject. I'd say my dad's generation was definitely probably more against this, move than me. I've been looking at baseball cards my whole life. I saw the introduction of some key statistics that actually had changed the game, and in a minute I'll give an illustration of how they've changed the game.
Okay, looking forward to it. So what do you think? Let's get into particulars here.
Sure.
Pitching might be a little tough to talk about pitching and batting today, just for time's sake.
Right.
So we might just focus on batting today.
That's good.
We all love batting. We all love Juan Soto. We love Tatis Jr.
Yes.
So what stat do you believe is the best judgment of talent for batters? What do you think kind of just paints this whole big picture?
Well, I'm going to refer to a statistic that we all know as OPS, which is on-base percentage plus slugging. And those two stats, on-base and slugging, percentages were not really well known when I was a boy growing up playing Little League Baseball.
Yeah.
But I'll discuss them here if you have a minute.
Yeah.
I can walk through them. When I was a kid, I'm going to put Babe Ruth aside. Babe Ruth, by the way, is leading like all these categories in history.
The Sultan of SWAT.
This guy, he best seasons, best career. He leads all the things I'm going to talk about, man. Just a giant baseball player. I'm going to move him to the side right here. But I want to compare when I was a boy, player A in the major leagues, let's say, got up 600 times, got 200 hits, and had a batting average of 333. Was considered a great player. He'd be batting leadoff for a team and getting a good contract, probably 4-year, $2 million contract. $500,000, if that. That was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
$2 million now is like a month's pay.
And just to clarify, that would be the 70s?
Yeah, we're talking about mid-70s.
Mid-70s, okay.
When Bill James' book came out about the baseball abstract, I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
So I saw, as I was in Little League, I saw the stats change as I go into high school.
Mm-hmm.
So player B has different stats. He has 500 at-bats and 150 hits and only a 300 batting average. In my time, would be considered an inferior player.
Yeah.
Because his batting average was not as high as the others. Batting average was everything.
Mm-hmm.
So player A with the nod, 333 is a great batting average, may have won him a batting title. But then Bill James comes along and he invents a stat called on-base percentage, which I think is a vital stat.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the most vital stat, but it's right up there with slugging.
Yeah.
Which means how many times did a guy actually get on base? Not just batting average, because we know that guys can also walk. They can get intentionally walk. They can get hit by a pitch. There's all different ways to get on base. So the on-base percentage is exactly that. It's hits plus the walks, plus hit by a batter, over how many at-bats and hits, and sacrifice flies are added in there. I don't want to get too technical, but how many times the guy actually went to the plate, and how many times did he get on base? Well, now we're going to go, Stephen, go to look at player A and B again with new eyes, new vision, with new statistics. Player A was a weak hitter, he wasn't a power guy, he was a singles guy. He got 200 hits and he got no walks. He just swung at everything, right? That's one of the Dominican players was interviewed once about why he was such a great bad ball hitter. I think it was Vladimir Guerrero Sr.
Yeah.
Why such a bad... He said because you can't walk your way off the island. You had to swing. It was kind of a funny joke. But he had 200 hits, but no walks. His on-base percentage was his batting average, 333.
Yeah.
Player B, though, with the 150 hits and 500 at-bats, he had a Juan Soto-like good eye, and he walked 100 times. He was at the plate 600 times, but in batting average, it didn't calculate in these 100 walks. So his on-base percentage, 150 hits plus 100 walks, equaled 416 on-base percentage, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that blows away 333.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
He was on base almost 42 times out of 100.
Yeah.
So that's one key stat. When I was a kid, player B was considered inferior in today's world because of Bill James, because of the revolution in statistics. Now is considered the better player. And that's what made Billy Beane very popular when the book Moneyball was written, following his 2001 or 2003 Oakland A's team, that he used stats before any other GM, and he was getting players off like the ash heap, just kind of rejected players because their batting average was 280, but their on base percentage was 340.
Yeah,
and he'd signed them for cheap contracts, and the A's became a winning powerhouse. It was a best-selling book. We've read it.
Yeah,
and we've seen the movie. It became a movie. So I'm going to go one step further, Steve. That's okay. Talk about the next stat, which I think is very important.
Let's do it. I think I might have an idea.
Slugging percentage, everybody.
Slugging.
Which means this is a good stat, great stat, which was around when I was a kid, but not very valued, was actually how many total bases did the player get. Doubles count a little more than singles. You get an extra base. Triples, homers. Going back to player A, kind of a weak leadoff hitter. No offense to leadoff hitters. This guy just happened to only get 200 singles. No doubles, no triples, no walks, no homers, right? So his slugging percentage was his batting average. It was 333. No extra bases. But player B, the one with the 150 hits, actually, if you look at the numbers I wrote down, he had 95 singles, he had 30 doubles, 5 triples, and he had 20 home runs. He had 250 total bases out of 500 at-bats. In this statistic, walks are subtracted. There's no walks in this at all.
Gotcha.
So he had 500 at-bats, 250 total bases for a slugging percentage of 500.
Okay. So
slugging now actually values that player even further than player A because he's actually getting more bases, more productive for the team. And so those two statistics are important, and they combine to make the statistic OPS, on-base percentage plus slugging. And this is a stat which I think, Stephen, back to your first question, is to me probably the most important statistic for a batter. is he getting on base? And if he's getting on base, is he getting extra bases? And player A, because he was just a singles hitter, he had a 333 on base percentage and a 333 slugging. His total OPS was 667, which today would be considered in grades from A to F would be like a D. Like it's below average. It's not good. You want to have at least a 750 or so, 730. 800 is like a B. 850 is really a good player. 850. 900 is considered like a great player.
Yeah, A.
Yeah, and then if you have a OPS of 1.00 and
like
higher, superstar. Yeah. If you're above 1. Juan Soto is one of those players who has a plus 400 on base percentage, plus 600 slugging. He's above 1, which is a great thing. Anyway, so player B, when you add up his, remember player A was 667. Player B, when you add up his on base percentage plus his slugging, you notice he is 916.
And blows him out of the water.
Again, everybody, when I was a kid, player A was the better player.
Yeah.
333 batting average. But now, when you look at the more really accurate statistics, and I have one more statistic, Steve, that's okay to share.
Yeah, I mean, now we've covered the slash line, average, batting average, and on-base percentage and slugging, kind of combine that into OPS, but is there another stat that's even more accurate?
There's a stat that's rarely used, that's not on the baseball cards. These are all on baseball cards, that I would think that maybe people who are managers and scouts, would look for, but it's not talked about often, and that's called runs created, or RC. In our world, RC stands for rookie card. So all of you who are watching this who get a baseball card, I'm going to try to collect you, all right? So maybe you can sign it for me. But RC stands for runs created, and that statistic is actually taking your hits plus your walks plus your total bases and dividing it by at-bats and walks. Or more simply, if you look at the bottom number 2 formula, which my fat finger is covering, it is OBP, on base percentage, plus slugging times your at-bats. Okay, so it's kind of one of those Bill James oddball stats that took years. Only recently has this stat actually been accepted into the baseball world. Player A has a runs created score of 66.5. 66.5, which is below average. But player B, again, the less batting average hitter, but more bases, more on base, has a runs created score of 104.2. And the reason is that they figure because when he gets a double, he's going to drive in a run from first possibly.
Yeah.
That counts better than a single. A triple drive. If he gets a triple with less than 2 outs, he may score a run on a sacrifice fly where the singles hitter is not going to score. So runs created, baseball's about runs. Who's going to win 5-2 or 5-4. And a guy who's got a higher runs created score will give a team a better chance to get that winning run. So that's an obscure stat that I think is very important.
Yeah. And then even with runs created, we have variations within that. Probably the most important one, I'd say the most useful one might be the weighted runs created plus, which it just factors in for different ballparks because any baseball lover knows that different ballparks have different features. The Rockies have very thin air, balls fly out. Some, fences are way longer than others. So I think factoring in that to the equation definitely makes it the most accurate. So, OPS plus used to be kind of like that like standard, but with weighted runs created, it's even more accurate.
There are some statistics, Steve, that factor in stolen bases, like variations of these that would factor in a player. Ricky Henderson was probably one of the greatest leadoff hitters of all time. He had 100 stolen bases, 2, 3, 4 consecutive years, 130, and how does that factor into any of this? Well, it doesn't. Yeah. Well, there's variations that would factor in stolen bases. And then the last statistic that which you don't have time to go over, which is a little more complicated, we've talked about already, is WAR. And a lot of players, ESPN uses WAR is like wins above replacement, like how great is this player, and I know I'm not really, I really can't follow it from home because it has like some weighted stuff, like it adjusts for the stadium they play in, and I don't have all that knowledge, with me, or it's a less accessible stat for the
we can't
layman,
calculate the defense and the distance to the ball and all that stuff. But man, the websites and statisticians that do, I believe it to be a useful stat, just because all the best players seem to have the best WAR.
And Mike Trout is already like at 74 for his career WAR, which is above a lot of Hall of Famers, and he's climbing that ladder, which is, he's an amazing player. And that WAR, so I don't use the WAR stat, but I do love the stats we talked about. And I do think if you have a hitter who has an OPS of, say, I mentioned 1,000, right? 1.00, which is superstar level, it really can look at that stat right away, and you can look at it and say how many times the guy gets on base, how many bases does he get. So for me, when I see a 900 or above, I know that player is an exceptional player.
Yeah.
So that's something I can use very simply and calculate very simply.
We can look at that and know exactly what it's calculated.
Exactly, because it includes walks, it includes hits, hit by pitches, it includes everything, on base percentage plus the slugging. So,
yeah, that's a great stat. Bill James, thank you.
Well, he is here, and Bill James, his book here is an excellent book, and I encourage everyone to look into it. And of course, Babe Ruth, I mentioned, he leads all the leaderboards and all these stats. He walked, he had home runs, he was amazing.
Last question, let's just wrap this up. So we kind of know how it's helped the game. Mm-hmm. So how has Sabermetrics helped the game and or maybe hurt the game?
Again, going back to that movie Trouble with the Curve, there are only so many things a piece of paper can tell about a player. Clint Eastwood was the old-time scout, and he wanted to see how the player, how he was, how fast he was, or the sound of the bat, ball off the bat, you know. So it's hurt the game some, because there are some players who might fill up a stat sheet in high school or the minor leagues, and maybe it doesn't translate. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because they're kind of slow. I'm not sure at this point if it's really fair to make any judgment on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I referenced his father, but he cannot really run out. He won't be able to beat out a lot of ground balls. So a scout can maybe incorporate, a player's skill level plus his physical skills. And
plus is just what he brings to the team, all the intangibles. We think about Brett Gardner, how he's been he's not the best player on the field, but he is such a leader to the Yankees. And someone like him, you can't have a stat for his leadership and his intangibles that he brings to the dugout.
That's exactly right. So and that we know that baseball, there's chemistry or not chemistry. There have been teams that have won a World Series that didn't like each other. But a lot of the teams that won World Series liked each other. They hung out together. The Yankees, referencing them again. We said Brett Gardner, he's the last holdover from that core four. Derek Jeter and Posada and Mariano Rivera. So so there's intangibles that where statistics do not cover. And I remember the San Francisco Giants had Barry Bonds, who has led a lot of those statistics, right up there with Babe Ruth, although they might be tainted due to, maybe some drug use or whatever. But him and Jeff Kent, the second baseman, got into a fight in the dugout, I think it was during the playoff stretch.
That's crazy.
And that, the chemistry was so off. Yeah. And so to say hurt, I'd say the piece of paper doesn't give the full picture.
Yeah. There's more to it. I'd agree with that. Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, Stevie.
And be sure to tune in to next week's episode. We will be covering Mickey Mantle and his just legendary talent and all that he is.
Unbelievable.
So, come back next week. Have a good day.